After a wobbly start for the Blue Jackets, Malcolm Subban was actually pretty good last night. Unfortunately, no one else seemed to show up, so that's what we're going to talk about on today's Locked on Blue Jackets.
You're Locked on Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked on Blue Jackets, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host, Jay Foster, here to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly about your favorite team and mine, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before we get started, I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day every single day. Locked on Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and over on YouTube. Also, have to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Download the Sleeper app, use promo code LOCKEDON, NHL to go up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply, so see Sleeper's terms of use for details. We're not going to spend too much time dwelling on last night's game because, quite frankly, Malcolm Subban was the only guy that showed up. And I was not the most charitable to him after he allowed a goal like 17 seconds in, but credit to him. He did about as good of a job as he could have done, quite frankly. Faced 35 shots, saved 32 of them. All I ask from the Blue Jackets goalkeeping this season is to be like above 900, and Subban did that. It was his first NHL game since I think January 2022. So like he was fine. He was better than fine, actually. He was a perfectly acceptable. He was above replacement level goaltending. Unfortunately, no one else showed up, and Freddie Andersen cruised to maybe his easiest 25 save shutout or 23 save shutout he's ever had. I kind of tweeted about this after the first period. The Carolina Hurricanes didn't look like they were trying especially hard in that game. So, like, it wasn't a great first period for the Blue Jackets, but it was better than I thought. But then I thought about it and I was like, man, the Hurricanes don't even look like they're trying. And they still more than out-doubled the Blue Jackets up on shots in that first period. It was 13-5 at the end of the first period. And I was like, man, it's going to be a long night. Blue Jackets kind of stepped up a little bit after that. Carolina still didn't have to try very hard. Freddie Andersen has been spectacular this season, by the way. He's missed a ton of time, obviously, due to that clotting illness that he had, or that blood clot situation. I believe he's only playing home games at the minute. I assume they don't want him to get on a plane with blood clots, which does kind of make me question, should he be playing if he's not safe to like sit on a plane for an hour and a half? But that's a whole other thing. When needed, he's been very good. He's 12-3 on the season, has 3 shutouts and a .931 save percentage. So like I think Freddie is back after last season where he was only okay. I thought he's been spectacular this season. So like a well-deserved shutout, but I still don't think the Blue Jackets really made him work. There was nothing in there where I was like, wow, how did he make that save? But it is what it is. I thought the Jurek Blankenberg pairing looked quite good. I thought, again, Cole Sillinger continues to impress me as a very young player playing against the top lines of the other team. I'm just double checking that he was. In fact, my guess is that he was matched up against the Svechnikov line for most of the game, but I have to double check that because I don't remember off the top of my head. Cole Sillinger was matched up against Aho, Gensel, and Seth Jarvis as the opposing center. And in terms of defense, it was Brady Shea and Brett Pesce. So like I don't think that's their top pairing, but still tough matchups for Cole Sillinger. And again, weathered the storm about as well as could be expected of him, frankly. Like I said, I've already said, I like Jurek and Blankenberg a lot. They didn't get a ton of time, obviously, because why would they do that when they can play Ivan Provorov for almost 23 minutes a night, when he's getting beat to hell in basically every matchup. But hey, this is where we are right now. I'm choosing to be positive about Jurek and Blankenberg having a good night, and Cole Sillinger having a good night, and The Gaunt Danforth Malatesta line actually looked decent as well, which I enjoyed. Justin Danforth had a very good night. Didn't create a ton of offense necessarily, but also gave up basically nothing. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna count that as a win. But this is about what I expected from this game, and I think it's about what everyone expected from this game. If I'm being really, really honest, like I wanted them to show up. I wanted them to be competitive. I didn't want anyone to get injured. Like I didn't want it to be 9-0, and they did like 3 out of the 4 of those. So I'm gonna go ahead and count this as a win. But I think it really does kind of show you just how good of a team Carolina is, that they can like bring their B minus C plus game and still skate rings around the Blue Jackets. And this is why, the Blue Jackets have taken great strides this season, I think, if not as a team, then in like for individual players, despite some of the struggles that some of them have had with ice time or line mates or coaching decisions or injuries or whatever. We've seen good individual performances from a lot of people, from a lot of players. But the Blue Jackets are probably not going to be a contender next season. And like, I'm okay with that. And I think everyone else has to be okay with that. I think they should be better next season, barring injuries, curses, weird coaching controversy that happens 4 days before training camp kicks off. Like, I don't know if Pascal Vincent will be here next season. I don't know what's going to be going on in the goaltending. I don't know. We don't know who the GM is going to be. Like, there's a lot up in the air right now, but the Blue Jackets should take steps forward. I realize I said all of this like last off season, and look where we are now. But like, the Blue Jackets should, on paper, be better next season than they were this season. They are still not on par with teams like Carolina, teams like New York, who are, the pinnacle in the Metropolitan Division right now. No one else in the Metro wants to make the playoffs, apparently. Carolina, I think, is a full 20 points ahead of the 3rd seed in the Metro right now, which is so funny. But going forward, games like this are gonna be really good benchmarks for the Blue Jackets in terms of how do they match up against true contenders? We saw it against Colorado where they goalied themselves to a win. We kind of saw it earlier in the season when they had good games against Vegas and against Edmonton, and But then you look at this game against Carolina, and I'm like, right, okay, they're still a ways away, but these are really good benchmark games. And I think the rest of the season, for what is there, 4 games left? I think 5 games left. I can't say off the top of my head. But the Blue Jackets, I know they have another game against Carolina left. They have a game against Florida. They are playing Tampa Bay tomorrow on the 9th, and they've got a game against Nashville as well. So like, of those 4 games, that's like, I would say 3 cup contenders, and then Nashville, who are pretty solidly in a playoff spot, if I am remembering the standings correctly. I don't look at the standings a ton anymore because, like, what's the point, quite frankly? Oh, look, we're still at the bottom. Nashville is, they're not like clinched, but they are pretty solidly in a playoff spot. I think they need 1 more point to clinch a playoff spot right now. So again, really good benchmark games for this team to kind of match up against. Not a great game, but some promising individual performances, and we move on. There's 4 games left in the season. Again, the Blue Jackets are sitting where they are. They're sitting at 4th. Arizona won last night, which was great for them staying ahead of the Blue Jackets. I believe they've now jumped. They've jumped Montreal. So the Blue Jackets are 6 points behind Montreal and 9 points ahead of Anaheim. So again, I feel pretty confident that this is where they're going to land. They're going to be 4th in the standings or in the draft rankings. They could win the lottery. They could drop to 6th, but they have, I think it was, I saw on Twitter last night, they have about an 80% chance of picking in the top 5, which, great. I don't think, even if they win tomorrow against Tampa Bay, which I don't think they're going to do, but again, like, I didn't think they were going to beat Philadelphia. I didn't think they were going to beat Pittsburgh. I didn't think they were going to beat Colorado. Like, they've won 3 out of 5 games, I think, since I said that they might not win another game all season. So we'll see. We'll see what goes from there. I got a ton of mailbag questions. I was going to talk a little bit about the Tampa Bay Lightning, but I got so many good mailbag questions that I want to make sure that I give them all kind of the time and effort that they require. So we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we're going to talk about things like goaltending. We're going to talk about things like drafting. We're going to talk about all kinds of fun things. There's some trades in here. There's some contract talk. There's one I'm very excited about, which is about Michigan alumni. So we're gonna just dive right into all of that in just a second here on Locked On Blue Jackets. First, I'm going to tell you guys about Sleeper, because the season's basically over right now, and I think the less said about the Blue Jackets season, the better. But regardless of that, unlike the Blue Jackets, you could win big, and you can do that by playing Daily Fantasy Hockey on Sleeper. They're the official Daily Fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network, and they're our number one choice for Daily Fantasy Sports, because you can win 100 times your cash like this. They've also got things like NFL, NBA, MLB, but let's be honest, I'm here for the hockey, and I suspect that you are as well. Entries can be made in under a minute, and all you have to do is pick whether guys like McDavid, Ovechkin, Crosby, McKinnon are going to record more or less in their sleeper projection for things like goals, assists, saves, plus minus, and more in any given game. To win 100 times your money on Sleeper, all you need to do is correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. You heard me right, Blue Jackets fans. Just get 8 questions right, and you can win 100 times your money. So start paying attention and nail your picks so you can start winning big. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you'll get to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Let's start off with kind of a broad one. My good friend JD Young, host of Locked On Sharks, at My Fryhole on Twitter, wants to know what the biggest question for the Blue Jacket, what's the biggest question the Blue Jackets have to address in the offseason? And there are just so many of them, if I'm being honest. I could sit here and I could say, well, obviously the GM question needs to be answered. They need to figure out, is Pascal Vincent going to be the coach going forward? I suspect he'll be here next season, just because I believe right now they're paying 3 head coaches. Brad Larson is still under contract for this season, but so they have to pay him basically until his contract ends. Mike Babcock is going to be on the books for another 2 years, and Pascal Vincent is going to be on the books for another 2 years. So I don't think next year they want to continue that streak of paying 3 coaches, because Brad Larson will come off the books. If they hire someone that isn't Pascal Vincent, they'll go on the books. I don't think they want to pay 3 head coaches at the same time. They don't do it. So I suspect Pascal Vincent will be here next year. So I don't know that that's necessarily a question. The biggest question for me, I think, is goaltending. I think, and we'll talk a little bit more about goaltending kind of in later on in the episode, but do you go forward with Elvis and Daniil Tarasov as your number 1 and your number 2? Do you try and move Elvis so you can give Tarasov that number 1 spot? Tarasov has given us a really small sample size so far, but he has looked really, really good. I'm not willing yet, I don't think, to throw Merzlikins away, just because getting rid of that contract is going to be tough regardless. You're probably going to have to retain salary and or add a sweetener, like a pick or a prospect or whatever, to get rid of that contract. And if you get rid of Merzlikins, you're going to have to find someone else, because right now, I don't think Jack Greaves, as good as he's looked, is not NHL ready. I would rather have him in Cleveland playing a bunch of games than sitting on the bench behind Tarasov. Would love to have a goalie duo of Greaves and Tarasov, where Tarasov is 6'6" and Greaves is, I think, generously 5'11", but we'll see from there. So do you get rid of Elvis? Do you bring in a different goalie? I know, goalies that are unrestricted free agents this season. The only one I can think of is Antti Raanta off the top of my head. I'd have to look at the cap-friendly page. But do you go out and get a veteran for a year to sit behind Tarasov and let him be that number 1 guy? It all kind of depends on whether you can move Elvis, which I guess we got a couple more questions about Elvis, so let's kind of move on into one of those, and I will continue thinking about veteran goalies that you could pick up for cheap to sit behind Tarasov if that's going to be an option. Okay, let's go with this one from Big Time Tommy 69 on Twitter. Do I think Elvis is a top 2 goalie next year? Yes, but I think his leash is getting shorter and shorter, and that's not necessarily anything he's doing. I think Elvis has been much better this year than he was last year, which is great to see. I think Tarasov has been so good that, like, it's not necessarily his net to lose yet, but you've got to think that Elvis can feel Tarasov, like, right behind him, and if he starts to stumble, Tarasov's gonna overtake him, and I think if Tarasov manages to take the net full time, I don't think he's gonna give it back, and so, again, we talk a little bit about contracts, we talk a little bit about, Tarasov is still very young in terms of NHL goalie. I think this is his third full season in North America. And the first 2 of his seasons have been cut short due to injury. And now the third one's been cut short due to injury. But, like, I'm not convinced yet that Tarasov is the savior and that we should kick Elvis to the curb this summer. I would be surprised if they do, but they would have to bring in someone else because they don't have a second NHL level goalie in the organization right now. Credit to Jet Greaves. He's not ready. Follow that up with another question about Elvis and another guy in a trade, Fenrir Varga. If a team offered a 2024 first-round pick in exchange for Elvis and Provorov, but I'd have to retain 50% on both, would I pull the trigger? My instinct to this is it would depend on the team. It would depend on where the pick is, because if it's going to be like 32nd overall, probably not. But if you can get a first round pick out of, like, the Islanders, for example, have their first round pick, and I'm not expecting them to do a ton in the playoffs. Sorry to Gil Martin, host of Locked On Islanders, who I like very much, but I think he would also be the first one to say that he's not expecting anything from them in the playoffs either. In terms of retaining 50%, so Ivan Provorov is going to be making 4.725 next season. I would retain 50% on him in a heartbeat, just like that. Another team is getting him for 2.4 million or whatever it is. And I'm okay with having that kind of money on the books for 1 season. Elvis is making 5.4 million for another 3 seasons after this. Do you want, oh God, math. Do you want 2.7, I think it is, million more on the books? So that would total up to be around about 5 million on the books for Provorov and Muslikin's contract next season, and then another 2.7 on the books for 2 seasons after that. Elvis is being paid until the end of 26-27. I will say they're not retaining anything. So they're retaining on Jack Roslovic right now. He's off the books at the end of this season. And then next season and the season after, they're paying Alex Wennberg just under $1 million for his buyout. So I feel better about it now because I wasn't sure. Like, I was suspecting that Andrew Peak was on the road to a buyout this summer. They managed to shift that contract. So I guess I would have to say that this is a very long-winded way to say yes, but it depends on what you do with Jake Bean and his contract. Nick Blankenberg needs a new contract. Alex Nylander needs an extension. You got Chinikov needs a new contract. Sillinger, Marchenko, Texier, and Johnson all need new contracts as well. If you have money left over after all of that and you think that you can deal with having 5 million of dead cap, then sure. But again, if it's for 32nd, I'm probably no. If it's for like 20 to 24, probably yes. Just because I feel like the 25 is, for me anyway, is where you start seeing the drop off in terms of potential elite talent to solid NHLer. And so if you can get, somewhere between 16 to 24, I think for 50% of Provorov and 50% of Elvis, I think, yeah, that feels like a trade that I personally would make. I don't think I have any other Elvis/goaltending questions. So we'll take a quick break and then we'll move on to a couple more unconnected questions. That's come up in just a second here on Locked On Blue Jackets. First, I'm going to tell you about eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience is the formula for winning championships. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. They've got everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. They've got superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you're going to find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every single time, or you're going to get your money back. So eBay Motors, you're going to burn rubber, not cash. They've got all of the parts you need at the prices you want, so it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to US customers. Welcome back to Locked on Blue Jackets. We are doing some mailbag questions. Let's rattle through some of these because I want to try and get to all of them. Brian Fisher, host of Locked on Red Wings. Which Michigan alum has been the most impactful? Who do you think has been the most slept on? I think it's easy to say that Adam Fantilli was the most impactful straight away. I think Zach Werenski has been really underrated this season. I think he's been quietly very, very good. Obviously, he's got 4 games left to score to get 5 points to tie Seth Jones' single season record. I still think he does it. Nick Blankenberg, I think, is getting slept on, but we all know how I feel about Nick Blankenberg. We're going to talk about him in a second here. But all of the Michigan alum have been great. And I'm really excited to see if we potentially add another one in about 4 days or so. The Frozen Four ends, I think, April 12th or April 13th, I want to say. Gavin Brindley will either be going pro or returning to Michigan for his junior year. I'm honestly okay with either one, but we could have yet another Michigan alum on the team. We really need to go out and get a Michigan goalie. We just do. I would like to have a full starting lineup of Michigan alum. I just think that would be really funny. Back to big time Tommy 69. Why did they put Meyer on waivers? I think probably just guys are getting healthy. Obviously, Sean Corrali being back. They need to put him on waivers, so it was because he'd been up for longer than the emergency recall required from him, I believe. So you can only play 9 games, and then you have to go through waivers if you want to get sent back down, or if they want to send them back down. Meyer, I believe, had played his 10th game, so they had to put him through waivers. I don't know why they haven't sent him back down yet. I don't know if that resets the clock necessarily. They might have sent him back down and called him back up, and again, emergency recall, that resets the clock. They've got him for another 10 games. But like I said, Corrali is back. I don't know when we'll see Chidakov. Obviously, Jake Bean being out, that's a slightly different conversation because it's forwards. I don't know if we see Boone Jenner again for the rest of the season. I would guess no, but there's just no way to know with that kind of there's no timeline for Boone Jenner's return, which is absolutely fine and fair. But basically, they put him on waivers to try and get a little bit of extra time with him. Because they didn't want to put him on waivers. If they put him on waivers, they could have risked losing him for free. They didn't. So I think what they've done basically is they've risked it now and just reset the clock because they don't want to lose him to waivers, but now feels like a great time to do that, and they want to have the flexibility of being able to send him down if they need to without having to go through waivers again. So they do it now, and everything is A-okay, fine. He made it through waivers. Everything is hunky-dory in Carson Meyer land. Greaves Gunners at CBJ50 Robinson. The roster right now, according to Cap Friendly, has 10 RFAs on it. Who are you re-signing? Are you letting anyone go? I happen to still have the Cap Friendly page up. I did not close it, which is, I know everyone is shocked, including me. So, RFAs, Alexander Texier, Kirill Marchenko, Cole Sillinger, Igor Chinikov, Carson Meyer, Alex Nylander, Jake Bean, Nick Blankenberg, Jet Greaves, Kent Johnson. And that's not counting Tyler Angle, Josh Dunn, Marcus Bjork, Jake Christensen. They're all RFAs. I would give all 10 of the guys up with the big team right now extensions. I would. I could see Carson Meyer. Maybe they'll sign him to a qualifying offer and give him a 2-way contract. I imagine the same thing will happen with, I believe, just Treyfix Wolanski. No, Treyfix Wolanski does not need a contract yet. But, I could see the same thing happening with guys like Bjork, Christensen, angle done. They'll give them a qualifying offer. They'll extend them. They'll sign them to 2-way contracts. Job done. Greaves, I could see making a little bit of a pay rise. There you go, pay rise. The only one I'm really unsure about right now is Jake Bean, which is interesting because I think he's been very good this season. Kind of really solidified that third pairing with Erica Branson, but you've got to think who's coming in. If Nick Blankenberg finishes the season strong, he's probably going to get again. I expect Blankenberg to get a two-way, and he'll go down or up or whatever. Do you try and get rid of Anna Boquist on a trade? Again, he's been very good. But you've got Denton Matejchuk coming in. You've got David Juracek, who's they've burnt a year of his entry-level contract this year. Like, what do they do with him? Do they send him back down to Cleveland for a third year? I can't imagine that they do. So the only one that I think probably goes is maybe Jake Bean, but everyone else, I'm like, yeah, you re-sign Texier, you re-sign Marchenko, you re-sign Sillinger, you re-sign Chinikov, Alex Nylander gets a 1-year Shelby contract, you re-sign Ken Johnson, you re-sign Jack Reeves. Like, there's none of these guys where I'm like, yeah, we can get rid of those. The other guy actually might be Texier might go at the deadline. Oh, not the deadline, at the draft for a pick or something like that, or they trade his signing rights for something. He's currently making $1.25 million. He's an RFA at the end of it. Has not been as good as I think they hoped he would be this season. I think he's been fine, but not fourth highest paid forward on the team. Fine. But I mean, that's kind of partially because right now there are 5 forwards on the Blue Jackets that make over $1 million. So it's less about Texier and more about how it's all entry-level guys right now. But yeah, I think I keep all of them. I really do. This kind of falls into the next one. Matt Wilcox 773 or Matt _Wilcox 773. Excuse me. Do I see Blankenberg as a long-term defenseman for us? I know everyone loves him, but we have so many defensemen in the pipeline. I think he's going to be the odd man out by the time we're ready to compete for a cup. I do think he's going to be the odd man out. I still think he could be a real good NHL defenseman. I think he has shown flashes of this. I think I'm in the minority here, I think, of really liking Nick Blankenberg's game. But yeah, it's going to be an uphill climb because, like you said, they have so many defensemen in the pipeline. They might add another one with that 4th overall pick in the draft. We're going to talk about that pick in a second here. But he's got to fight past Juracek, Boquist, Damon Severson is around for a long time. Jake Bean can play lefty or right D. Branson's around for at least another 2 seasons. Like, Denton Matejchuk's coming in. He plays lefty, but that's a whole other thing. Jake Christensen is another guy that probably deserves a long NHL look at this point. Stanislas Svozil plays lefty, but he's another guy that I could see getting a look next season. There's a whole lot going on right now with who's going to be where, and I definitely think Nick Blankenberg has a future, and I don't think he's going to be the odd man out by the time they're ready to compete for a cup, because he is in that similar, he's only a year younger than Zach Werenski, which feels weird considering we only just got him like last year, but he's definitely a guy that I am looking at to have a big training camp this season and to make the team say, oh, well, we have no choice but to keep you. I like him a lot. I could see him as a long-term defenseman, but I don't think he's ever going to be a permanent top 4 guy. I really liked him with Juracek last night. I think if they move Provorov, I think that opens up another spot for Blankenberg potentially. Juracek obviously plays right D. Blankenberg can play a little bit of both. So does he take Provorov's spot in the top 4, or do they bump Matejchuk up? There's a lot of moving parts right now. The short version of this answer is I do see him as a long-term defenseman for us. But I also wouldn't be surprised if if he spends most of next season in Cleveland again, because again, he has an uphill battle there. Final question, I think. Fenrir Varga back again. You're picking 4th. in the draft, realistically, which 2 prospects do I want the Jackets to target in the 3 to 6 range? Berkeley Catton, Caden Lindstrom. I think even if Caden Lindstrom ends up being a winger at the NHL level, which people have kind of speculated about, if you put Lindstrom on Fantilli's wing, put Brindley on the other side, like that's a top line right there, and then that frees up. You've got Johnson coming into his own. You've got Marchenko. You've got Sillinger. There's another line. You've got Gaudreau. You've got Line. You've got all of these pieces, but those are my guys. I know a lot of people are talking about Demidov as an option for the Blue Jackets as well. I definitely, if he falls to 4, I absolutely would not be mad. But like for my money, my top 4 guys in the draft right now, Celebrini at number 1, obviously. I think Demidov goes second. And then the Blue Jackets will hopefully be able to choose between, or they will get one of Catton or Lindstrom. That's my guess right now. I lean towards Catton, I think, is a more Blue Jackets pick. I think Lindstrom is probably going to be a more effective player. And that's not to say that Catton's not going to be an effective player, but Lindstrom feels a lot more well-rounded, whereas Catton, I think, has that excitement that the Blue Jackets love to draft guys like that. Look at Ken Johnson. Catton and Johnson are not comparable players in any real kind of way, but like that's kind of my thought process is I think Berkeley Catton feels like a Blue Jackets pick, just like emotionally or spiritually. But I think I would take Lindstrom over Catton, but I think that this scouting staff would probably take Catton over Lindstrom. So we'll see. Those are my guys. Anyway, if Demidov falls to 4th, wouldn't be mad about it. I'm less confident in many of the defensemen. Obviously, we talked about Artem Levchinov earlier today. We're going to talk about Sam Dickinson tomorrow. We've talked about Buim. We've talked about Perek. There's a handful of guys that are kind of in that top 5 defenseman range that you're like, okay, any of these guys, and I don't think I would take any of them over the choice of having Can or Lindstrom. I really don't. So we'll see. That I think is all of my questions. If I have forgotten your question, I'm very, very sorry. Apart from Brian Fisher, who asked a follow-up question, which was, how do you stay so cool when your team is so bad? And I would like to say, a decade of practice, Brian. But this was a fun episode. I had fun anyway. Hopefully you guys did as well. Thank you for listening, for making us your first listen every single day. Locked on Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms. We're over on YouTube and on SiriusXM. Thank you for listening. I said that already. I've been Jay Foster. You can find me on Twitter at _Jacob Foster, JAKOBFORSTER. You can find the show at LO_Blue Jackets on Twitter and on Instagram. You can email me if you have comments, questions, criticisms, lockedonbluejackets@gmail.com. Tomorrow, like I said, Brock Otten is going to be back. We're going to be talking about Sam Dickinson, who's a really interesting defensive prospect, actually. I know I just said that I wouldn't take a defenseman at 4th, but maybe I take Sam Dickinson. Who knows? We'll talk about that tomorrow. Thank you a third time for listening. And until tomorrow, make sure you stay locked on.